Masked children, sinister puppets, terrifying clowns. These are just some of the 10 most terrifying and mysterious old photos in history. Number 10. Giraffe Women. You most likely already know the women of the Padang tribes or Giraffe Women. These women have an extremely long neck adorned with metal rings. Although at first glance it might seem curious and interesting, the reality behind this photograph is totally different. They come from Myanmar, Burma, a country that for 80 years has suffered a terrible situation of war and instability. For this reason, many people try to escape the country through the jungle to reach Thailand. The curious thing is that during the first migration, some women arrived with strange necklaces around their necks. Its origin and meaning is unknown, although it is thought that this custom is about 2,000 years old. This practice does not consist in lengthening the neck, as it may appear in the image, but in compressing the clavicle downward during growth and reducing the rib cage. Girls first start to wear rings when they are around 5 years old. Over the years, the coil is replaced by a longer one and more turns are added. Many hypotheses have been considered in order to discover why these women wear these necklaces. Some anthropologists suggest that these rings protect them from becoming slaves, making them less attractive to other tribes. It has also been speculated that this necklace gives them resemblance to a dragon, an important figure in KN folklore. On the other hand, it has been said that the coils protect them from the attacks of tigers. Padang women, when asked, acknowledge these ideas and often say that their purpose for wearing the ring is cultural identity. However, whatever the reason is, their deformed and gloomy appearance makes them look like anything but a person. Number 9. Human tooth sharpening. The human body has always been conceived as a place of expression, and body modifications have been the most recurrent option to achieve a much more original appearance of ourselves. Tattoos, implants, forked tongue, it seems something current, but the reality is that they are quite ancient practices. The photograph that you are looking at was taken in 1910 and shows a young woman from the Bagobo tribe, a town on the south coast of Mindanao, Philippines. Her teeth are sharp, giving her a fierce and aggressive look. It is a very common practice in several tribes and ethnic groups, specifically in Bali, which consist of manually sharpening the teeth. Historically, it has been done for cultural and spiritual purposes, since it was thought that filed teeth represented emotions such as rage or anger, under the belief that they will thus free themselves from the sins of the flesh. Otherwise, they will succumb to them and will reincarnate into animals after their death. It is also used as an initiation ritual for teenagers or even to differentiate the different social classes. But what if the purpose is not merely aesthetic or cultural? What if the purpose is something more sinister? Number 8. Clown Charlie Smith. Calrophobia is the irrational phobia or panic towards any clown. But where does this fear come from? According to experts, makeup and their disproportionate facial features generate mistrust since they break with the natural image of a person and hide the identity of who is behind that mask. The truth is that the presence of clowns dates back to around 2500 BC, and their original purpose was the same as today, to make everyone laugh and enjoy. But they always had a dark side. One of the most famous clowns was Jean-Gaspard Debarau, who disguised himself as a Pierrot and who killed a child in 1836 by hitting him with a cane that he used to walk. It is believed that he would have killed him because the boy had yelled insults at him in public. However, the first known ancestor of the clown was created by the British Joseph Grimaldi. He entertained audiences during the early part of the 19th century, and as he was one of the earliest celebrities, people were aware of his tumultuous personal life and the depression he suffered behind his exaggerated red smile. As you can see, the bad reputation of clowns has been around for a long time. Another example was clown Charlie Smith, who didn't exactly make anyone feel better in 1930 when he visited a children's hospital. Hundreds of years later, clowns remain for some a symbol of children's entertainment, and for others a synonym for chills. Number 7. A ghost in the background. It exists an album of photographs unearthed in a Lancashire second-hand and antiquarian bookshop by one of the museum's curators. They were taken by a controversial medium called William Hope, 1863 to 1933. He was born in Crewe, Wales, in 1863. In about 1905, he became interested in spirit photography after capturing the supposed image of a ghost while photographing a friend. After that, he found a group of 6 spirit photographers. They used double and triple exposure techniques to render the appearance of ghostly apparitions around the sitter. Hope's work gained momentum in the aftermath of World War I, a time when many bereaved people were desperate to find evidence of loved ones living beyond the grave. Although his deception was publicly exposed by a private investigator, Harry Price, 1881 to 1948, in 1992, Hope continued to practice. Number 6. Dancing with Death. Our following photograph belongs to a series of photos taken by Joseph Hall, an American photographer. In 1906, the Journal of the English Folk Song Society published a piece on the Old English ballad Death and the Lady. Someone realized the story might be used as a great vaudeville piece about the evils of card play and alcohol. For all those who don't know what a vaudeville is, it is a comic theater piece frequently combining pantomime, dialogue, dancing, and music. As touring performers were always searching for material that would play well in the sticks, this play would be a perfect opportunity. While the show, Joseph Hall captured the sequence of the action, providing a peculiarly detailed and rare view of the progress of a single vaudeville performance. But it's not the first time that a woman and a skeleton posed together on a photograph in the Victorian era. These vintage photographs and postcards of women dancing and flirting with skeletons are more than mere memento mori or snapshots of ladies at carnivals having a jolly wheeze in the face of death. They are in some respects quite transgressive. Some of these pictures were intended as educational erotica, giving the viewer a frisson of arousal while at the same time battering them on the head with the warning that this desire could lead to disease and even death. What we take from these rather bizarre pictures is that the association of sex and death is something disgusting and creepy at the same time. Number 5. Coven of Witches, 1875. Witchcraft has existed since the beginning of time, even if it was called something else. During the Victorian era, words like witchcraft and witch were banned. However, some people practiced magic and contact with the spirit world. They preferred to call it spiritualism, in spite of sharing similarities with witchcraft. The main focus of spiritualism was to communicate with the dead, and therefore this Victorian trend gave a spotlight to psychic mediums and spirit channels, people who had the ability to communicate with spirits or allow the spirit to speak through them. All things witches have been doing since ancient times. If you want to imagine the stereotypical look for witches in the 1800s, this is exactly what you'd conjure up. Unfortunately, the origin of this photograph is unknown, but what about the women in the photo? Real witches or fake? What do you think? Well, this probably wasn't the friendliest time period for witches. Besides, witches have always gone unnoticed. Why would they call attention to themselves if they were actually practicing witchcraft? It has no sense. Probably they were just 4 women having fun on Halloween. Number 4. The Ventriloquist. The story about photograph number 7 is totally unknown. However, it is perfect to focus on another of the issues that also causes in human beings ventriloquism. Its characteristic puppeteered prop known as a dummy became popular in the middle of the 18th century when circuses and theaters incorporated actors into their shows accompanied by a dummy that they made to speak to give a show and amuse the public, almost always interacting with their interlocutor. However, it has a dark and disturbing origin. There is a particularly chilling story that took place in America. In 1920, Charlie McCarthy arrived to the south of the country with a new ventriloquism show that fascinated and terrified everyone at the same time. His puppeteered prop, Edgar, represented a boy between 8 and 9 years old whose features were too real. Although his eyes were wooden, there was something sad and mean in them that made people quickly stop looking at him. So McCarthy was so good at his job that his audiences began to denounce him for witchcraft, since everyone was convinced that this dummy was possessed by a demonic entity. Another element that contributed more mystery to this famous artist was the care he handled his wooden friend. He did not allow anyone, under any circumstances, to get close to Edgar. McCarthy was later cruelly murdered. During the investigation, Edgar was also investigated. The Criminal Investigation Department realized that it wasn't a dummy, but a real child, since there were fingerprints on the front of his fingers. It was never known how McCarthy was able to preserve the body so well. It is completely inexplicable nowadays. However, the ventriloquist took the secret to the grave. Number 3. Masked Pioneers. The terrifying photograph of this masked army stretching to infinity has become very famous. They are children between the ages of 10 and 15 who belonged to the Vladimir Lenin Pioneers organization in the former Soviet Union. It was a new scout-type organization that embraced the ideological principles of the nascent Soviet Union. In this image, they are wearing gas masks during the defense of the city of Leningrad, St. Petersburg in 1937. Most of the ghostly children would die during World War II. It could be perhaps their last photograph. Number 2. Sylvester Claus Festival. On January 13, in the small town of Appenzell-Asserrhoden, Switzerland, the New Year's Eve is celebrated in a special way, with the arrival of Sylvester Claus. It is a masked character who walks at night from house to house, accompanied by other characters to wish a Happy New Year. The only written evidence about its existence appeared in 1663, when church authorities objected to such a noisy behavior. Only Appenzell-Asserrhoden has continued with this tradition to this day. 3 different types of Sylvester Claus can be distinguished: the beautiful, the schön, the pretty, ugly, the schön-wüst, and the ugly, the wüst. The beautiful wears embroidered headgear, with scenes of peasant life, domestic customs and crafts, special buildings, sports, or family life which take hundreds of hours of intensive work. Their dress resembles a local traditional costume. The pretty ugly wears a costume made of fir twigs, ivy, moss, and other natural materials, and a headgear similar in shape to those of the beautiful, but also decorated with natural materials. The ugly wears a made from the same materials as the pretty ugly, but coarser and more massive in appearance. It is important to mention that all the characters hide their faces behind a mask. The beautiful wears a very sweet mask similar to a doll's face. The pretty ugly wears a mask made with natural elements, and the ugly wears a scary-looking mask. Number 1. A pair of hungry pike. Who said fishing was funny? Our last photograph, taken at the beginning of the last century by an analog camera, shows a rather terrifying scene: a pair of pike attacking and devouring a poor fisherman. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary photograph portraying a heartbreaking scene, but it isn't. It is a manipulation. What is surprising about this image is that the manipulation of graphic documents is something that started before the digital age. Using different techniques, experts in the field manipulated photographs for any number of reasons: electoral campaigns, publicity, politics, or cover-up scandals. Digital photography is nothing more than an improvement on the techniques that were used in the past, but whatever the reason, this last photograph forces us to ask ourselves the following: should we believe everything we see? If we have to learn something about this sample, it is that photography is much more than an objective capture of reality. Remember, the weirdest, most twisted creature on the planet is the human being. Good luck sleeping tonight. There are many other chilling stories taken on camera. If you want to know them, we recommend you take a look at this video.